Our headline stories: China creates its own digital currency, and Chinese lending to Africa from 2000 to 2019 amounts to $153 billion. Now, history has it that China invented paper currency, and now China is doing something first again, minting money digitally. Yes, the digital yuan is coming to the market. What impact could this have on the global foreign exchange, and how could this impact trading with Africa? We'll get into this today. I'm Tolulope Adeleru Balogun. Welcome. This is Business Edge. Cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin have foreshadowed a potential digital future for money, though they exist outside the traditional global financial system and aren't legal tender like cash issued by governments. Money is already virtual, as credit cards and payment apps eliminate the need for bills and coins. But those are just a few ways to move money electronically. Now, China has taken the bull by the horn, and it's turning the yuan, its legal tender, into a computer code. China's version of a digital currency is controlled by its central bank, which will issue the new electronic money. It is expected to give China's government vast new tools to monitor both its economy and its people. By design, the digital yuan will negate one of Bitcoin's major draws, which is anonymity for the user. Beijing is also positioning the digital currency for international use and designing it to be untethered to the global financial system, where the US dollar has been king since World War II. China is embracing digitization in many forms, including money, in a bid to gain more centralized control while getting a head start on technologies of the future that it regards as up for grabs. Joining me is the founder and CEO of Koinkoin, Ola Atose. Ola, welcome back to Business Edge, and thank you once again for joining us.
Yes, very good morning to you, Tolu. Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about, what do you think is the move, the motivation that is spurring China onto this? They look to be, I think, about the first country now to digitally transform their currency, or to transform their currency digitally. And this is a massive move for the world's second biggest economy. What's behind it?
Well, there are a number of things. My view is China wanted to be first to the scene, getting their currency, or called the ECNY, on the blockchain. They've done that. They're now out there. I believe they have over 10,000 merchants who are now testing it, and 150 million yuan, roughly about $23 million, which has been put out through a variety of lottery schemes. So the members of the public can begin testing the process. Personally, I think China at this point wants to be at the forefront of the blockchain explosion, which we've seen over the last few years. They outright banned Bitcoin, and of course, and a number of other cryptocurrencies. And now they've introduced their own not crypto, but digital currency on the blockchain. So as it goes, I think by next year, China will have a lot more of the currency on their digital network. So it's too early to say what the short-term, long-term effects will be. But rest assured, there are changes to come, especially for those of us in the crypto business.
Okay, so while you're saying it's a bit early to tell what the long-term impact will be, just sort of in a supposing manner, what is the anticipated impact that you think this new digital currency could have on international foreign exchange, on the exchange for the cryptocurrencies as it may be, for the things that you do and the things that you work on? What kind of impact do you anticipate?
Well, so there's some very relevant questions that we should both think about. So Bitcoin today, recently, it's still floating around $58,000, $59,000. The mining of Bitcoin, as it's called, or the hashing of Bitcoin, which is done with a lot of power, 70% of that is being done out of China. So if you think about that, China is kind of holding a lot of cards here. A lot of power to mine Bitcoin is out of China. About 70% of it is done in China. China has now got their own digital currency. They are going to be in a position as a sovereign nation to compete quite fiercely with Bitcoin. So I think that in itself provides some that in itself will provide a lot of competition in the months to come. In terms of international forex, well, China's always devalued its currency, and we don't see personally any reason why that should change in the short to long term. They control their currency. They now have more control over what they spend. They'll have some sort of vertical control and oversight over what users, aka their citizens, are doing with money. So this gives, I think, China a powerful tool to control its economy.
So let's follow up on that aspect of it, because we can obviously tell there's going to be a lot of monitoring happening, not just for the economy, but individual users, whether they're Chinese or outside of the Chinese sphere. But in terms of that completely is different than what we know in terms of cryptocurrencies, which is the anonymity, which is it not being connected to a financial system, to the regular financial system. Do you think this will get some uptake? Will this not be one of the reasons people might consider, you know what? I don't want China monitoring my movements, my digital movements, my money movements, and I'm going to stay away from this. Could that aspect of it actually work against them?
Well, I think the view is off a cross-section of those who are testing it right now in China. They seem, pretty comfortable with the idea, the ease of being able to just go out with your phone and make payments via QR code. It's fairly straightforward. A lot of the local Chinese people won't complain against it. It will make their life easy. But in terms of the global view, views of persons like myself, or persons certainly, in the crypto space here in Africa or across the Western world, people like their freedom, right? We want to be able to do things, and if I want to, buy a jug of milk, I don't want anybody to know I'm buying a jug of milk. So I think the view will be to look for an alternative, to what the Chinese have done, to get more anonymity into the process, as long as obviously, what's being done is clear of, some of the more nefarious activities which often happen on anonymous, transactions.
Okay.
So again, yes, there will be some disadvantage to what China's doing, but China has a large economy. They may not care.
I like that you said that China has a large economy. So if it gets takeoff and it's accepted and it's used in China, it may not really matter what the rest of the world thinks about this. But do you think it can find global acceptance outside of China eventually, in the short term, medium term, long term? But eventually, do you think we will all come to somehow be impacted in a way by the digital yuan?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, right? So you mentioned earlier in your intro, Africa has $153 billion debt to China. Ultimately, that's spread across a number of nations here in Africa. I think Nigeria alone has $3 billion of that. If they've moved down to this digital path, one of their prerequisites for, maybe debt forgiveness or perhaps even, maintaining that sort of debt with China would be to, force our central banks to consider going down the digital route as well. Right, which will give ultimately, China, to some regard, more control, more transparency over, the way money is used, or the money they lend to the governments in Africa, the way that money is used. That could be a double-edged sword. It could mean that, it reduces corruption. For every dollar borrowed, we know exactly what the dollar is used for, how it's spent, where it goes to on the blockchain. For example, that's an option. But that said, it could expose the sovereignty of certain African nations. That in itself isn't necessarily a good thing. So again, it's early days. We still can't tell what this is, what this will bring. But it could be good for China, for the world at large, for Africa specifically. It's too early to say. I'm leaning on the side of maybe not.
Okay, so one of the other things we did mention earlier was that Beijing is positioning this to use and be designed to be untethered to the global financial system. And we know that the global financial system is dominated by the US dollar. How does that work? What do you think that would actually look like, trying to sort of basically now dominate a different financial system? It's not the regular global financial system, but China looking to sort of dominate this alternative financial system away from the dollar. How do you think that would look, and some of the nitty-gritty of how that might work?
Well, at the moment, for most of the global forex transactions, we always look at gold, and then we look at oil, and then we look at the US dollar. A lot of transactions done, notably, certainly across Africa and here in Nigeria, are all done in the US dollar. So I think maybe what China is trying to do, and they're trying to do it very quickly, is, hey, we're on the blockchain, we've got a digital currency, you need not be pegged to the dollar anymore. We see countries like, India, Iran, who still have dealings with China, dealings which are happening away from SWIFT. And as you know, SWIFT is, the US dollar system. And, anything that drives demand for either goods and services, raw materials or products, if it's done in a different currency on a completely different system, now the blockchain, a privatized blockchain developed by China, that in itself, I believe, will drive an entire new economy. Now, whether China's willing to open up its blockchain to a point whereby we can start trading, for example, the CNY against other currencies in the open market, obviously we don't know. They've not allowed that before, but they do allow it, but not to a certain degree. Whether they allow us to do that on a blockchain where we can start buying, Bitcoin or placing Bitcoin for CNY. We don't know if that's going to happen. So it's too early to say. But what I can say is any transactions that take place away from SWIFT happen on this Chinese system will drive more, may drive demand in different areas of the world in a completely different way. And it's not just in Africa, of course. There's Southeast Asia, there's South America, to mention a few others around the world.
Okay, so there's this conversation also that's been happening about countries also having their own cryptocurrency. So China is doing a digital currency, a digital version of their actual currency. Do you think we're going to see more countries sort of step to this? This is, I guess we'd say, a whole new world. And for a long time, the crypto space has been dominated by individuals, but we're seeing more formal organizations, financial organizations get involved. Now we're seeing something that is in the digital currency space coming from a country. What do you think countries are planning when it comes to cryptocurrencies, when it comes to digital currencies? China may be the first out of the gates, but I'm very sure others also have some plans. What do you think we can be looking for towards what can be introduced to the world economy in the coming years?
Well, I mean, of course, it's interesting you asked that question. So the U.S. Fed Chair Powell has now said, the project, which drives the U.S.'s own, digital currency creation is now a critical project. So they're looking at it, and they're looking at it, quite seriously now. One thing that they have mentioned in the U.S. Fed is, for them, it's not important first, it's important to get it right. So I expect that they'll be looking very closely at the Chinese yuan, digital yuan, to see what they've done and, perhaps improve upon it. But I guess if the U.S. goes that route, then I'm pretty sure we can start seeing central banks around the world, consider something similar. The Nigerian central bank, I'm sure, would be more than willing to join the foray if it's something that they see as beneficial. We know that in Indonesia, for example, they've created their own exchange, and it's a government-led initiative. So we can see them perhaps considering some sort of digital currency in the future. But we're here now. The world is changing before our eyes. Once upon a time, we had a world of cowries and shells as a means of exchange. We then had coins and gold, and then we had the paper notes, and now we're going down the digital route. And I guess in so many ways, the future is finally here.
All right. Ola, let's hold on. We're going to take a quick time out. When we come back, we talk about debt, but China is still part of that conversation as we look to the fact that in recent years, China's loan to the continent has started reducing. What could this mean? We'll be right back. Now, many African governments turn to China as an alternative for where cheap, unconditional lending could be obtained. China now has taken advantage of the situation to position itself as a leader, or rather lender of choice. Now, China has, however, cut down on its lending to African countries. So according to the new data published by the School of Advanced International Studies, China-Africa Research Initiative at the Boston University Global Development Policy Center, in 2019, lending dropped 30% to $7 billion, down from $9.9 billion in 2018. My guest, the founder and CEO of Koinkoin, Ola Atose, is still with me. Ola, so many people would have said that COVID, which has been blamed for the economic woes we've experienced since 2020, would have been responsible for this. But this decline in what China has been lending to Africa actually started in 2018. What do you think is behind this reduced lending now at this point? And of course, we're expecting it to even be less because of the pandemic as well.
Yes, of course, that's correct. So certainly, I would presume that the loans go down now that we've had this pandemic, and of course there are other reasons. One thing that we can find is the trade war with the United States. Where China has alleged to set off running what the West called debt trap diplomacy, as it's been called by a number of persons in the West. Donald Trump, the last president of the United States, with all the trade wars and everything that we're putting into effect, a lot of folks are now feeling that that's put some pressure on China, and China, as a result, pulled back a little bit from the money, that they make available to Africa. There are other reasons as well that we can also speculate. A lot of pressure, by opposition governments within Africa. Sort of called on, these deals, which are cheaper money available to Africa, but there's no transparency on how the monies are often spent. There's preferential treatment to different parts of government on how that money is divvied up. And of course, that pressure being put on external governments or by the different governments, by their opposing governments within Africa, has driven, perhaps that sentiment away from China, on Chinese money.
Okay, so now one of the issues that has been a very sticky point for many people, there's something, many of these loans from China have this sovereign immunity clause in them. There's also the issue of what's being used for collateral, which are typically national assets. And we've seen the controversy with the possible takeover of some of these assets when the loans are defaulted on. For African countries that are obtaining these loans from China and anywhere else, it's not just the Chinese, but particularly focusing on China at this point, is there nothing else that can be used as collateral? What can be in the stead of some of these national assets? So points where if you default, you might not see China taking over a railway or taking over a stadium or taking over anything that is actually owned by the people of a country and held in trust by the country's government.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, it's very, we've all seen in the news and certainly heard points where it was seen that the Chinese are coming in to sort of take assets, basically. I think what the Chinese do, unlike some of the other lenders that Africa has, is they're willing to discuss and they're willing to, look at the terms of the loan and restructure the loan. So payoff is easier. And as part of that, they often look at things like raw materials. That's one thing they look at. They often then look at leasing, some of the infrastructure they put in place. So now a lot of these loans are originally for infrastructure development. So things like ports and, et cetera, et cetera. So what you then have is if a country can't pay back, then you see leases. Some of these leases are a bit tricky. You see 100-year leases, in the instance of Djibouti, I know they have a port where China has its first foreign military presence. Things like that. So people are kind of looking to China as if China are doing this sort of, they're using these loans, these soft loans, if you like, and credit lines to push their geopolitical strategy across the world, where Africa is sort of part of that structure. But then again, if you look at some studies, one particular professor from Johns Hopkins stated that it's not really a debt trap diplomacy, that what we find is the money is cheaper from China. China's willing to negotiate and, restructure, and they're easier to work with, than the likes of the IMF, for example, which is, main shareholder is the U.S. And of course, cited recently by Egypt, they're looking to work with China because, the U.S. wants them to improve human rights record and stuff like that. So you have different reasons for different people. But then if you look at China's debt, it's 150 billion. It only makes for 20% of Africa's, debt, right? So where is the other 80%? So you have the Paris Club, you've got IMF, the World Bank. Unfortunately, Africa seems to be the cash cow that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
We would hope that that would change. As the new generation grows older and we start to see different ways of doing things, some more self-reliance in Africa. I believe that will ultimately change. We'll pay these debts off, and a new Africa will eventually emerge. That's my hope, at least.
All right, we'll end the conversation there. I wanted to ask about Russia, who has also now come knocking, offering support and loans, but we'll keep that as a conversation for another day. Ola Atose, founder and CEO of Koinkoin, thank you so much for joining me on Business Edge.
Always a pleasure.
All right. And that's a conversation that if you missed, you can definitely check out on our YouTube channel. We spoke to the Vice President of the Moscow Chamber of Commerce and Industry after the Moscow Africa Summit 2021. Now, Russia is coming to the continent as well, offering loans and support and technical assistance. And everyone is coming to Africa, the beautiful bride. Are we going to make the best use of it? Questions we have to ask. All right, so we're going to wrap things up with NC4 to watch. And we start with a cryptocurrency trading platform, Coinbase, which is reporting its preliminary results for 2021 Q1 revenues to be approximately 1.8 billion, up from $190.6 million in the same period of last year. Now, in an unaudited result, the cryptocurrency trading platform recorded profits of $730 million to about $800 million compared to $31.9 million in 2020 Q1. And this is riding on the increased interest in cryptocurrencies. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has revised Nigeria's economic growth forecast upward for 2021. The growth will now be 2.5% from the previous 1% it had predicted in January. The IMF made the prediction in its latest World Economic Outlook. However, it expects just a 2.3% economic growth for the country in 2022. The COVID-19 pandemic has seen the world confront its biggest health crisis this century, posing one of the most disruptive periods to businesses and forcing banks to empathize with clients' lost livelihoods and businesses by easing off loan payment demands. Now, top East African banks increased provisions for bad debts by over $736 million in 2020 in order to reduce exposure on household and business loans in the countries that have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, affecting and impacting profitability and returns to shareholders. And back to the IMF one more time. It has published the latest World Economic Outlook, with the group now projecting a stronger recovery for the global economy in 2021 compared to the January forecast. Now, the group's updated data for South Africa shows that annual growth is projected to be about 3.1% in 2021, which is an improvement of 0.3 percentage points from the 2.8% January forecast. The group forecasts annual growth of 2% in 2022 for SA, as the data published by the Statistics South Africa last month showed that SA's economy contracted by 7% last year. And that's it on this edition of Business Edge. Follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. Head to our website or to our YouTube channel if you've missed any of our great financial and business conversations about what's happening on the continent. I'll see you next time. I'm Tolulope Adelaru Balogun.